just coming on from my previous video, I just thought I would do a quick clip about how to do different types of basting. In my previous video I didn't really do any basting on the quilting. It was a small enough piece and I knew I could just work with it, but I thought anyone who has any kind of experience of quilting would realise that I hadn't done basting and would probably be shouting at the screen at that time, so I thought I'll quickly do a video about basting and different types of basting that are available for you. You can choose which one you want to go ahead with. So the traditional method of basting, the point of basting I should start off with actually, is to stop these fabrics from moving when you quilt them. And also, as you're quilting, sometimes because they can move between layers, you end up with a kind of pleat that happens over the back or the top of the sewing that you're doing, and it makes it a bit unsightly. And obviously it distorts the piece as well slightly. So the idea of basting helps to hold all the layers together. It's usually something that is removed at the end, although there is a method I will show you that doesn't require any kind of taking out of the basting. So the traditional way of doing this is with a needle and thread. I'm using it's a good idea to use a really different coloured thread for this, because then you can see it and it's easier to find it where you want to remove the stitches later on. And the best way to do it, really big stitches, and you start in the middle of your work and you work outwards. So the idea is you use your needle and you pop it through the layers. Try not to distort the piece as you do it. You don't have to knot it, you don't have to do any kind of holding stitch or anything like that, because these are just stitches that are removed later on. It's actually easier to remove your stitches if you don't knot it. And then you just work your way along, really big stitches. And it's quite quick. It would be quicker if I didn't have this mat underneath, because that's too grippy. Right. So you work your way out from the centre. So if we imagine this is a much bigger quilt, that would obviously take a little while longer. And then you work from the centre outwards in a sort of, I would say, Union Jack fashion for anyone who's not English and doesn't recognise what that would mean. That would mean going out this way, and this way, and this way, in that sort of order. And you would basically fill the piece that you're doing with these stitches, and it just holds your layers together. As you can see on the back, you get this sort of effect. And just do a few more and you can see it is quite quick to do, but this is the idea of this, is that it's removed later on. You don't have to be careful about your stitches particularly. They don't need to be pretty, they're just quick. It's actually better to use a slightly longer needle than I'm doing here, right? Anyway. So anyway, that's one type of basting done, and as I say, you would then be able to remove that later. If you do want to remove it at any point, the easiest thing to do is just get your finger, pull it, and it just falls straight out like that. Okay. Another method of basting is to use pins. Now, obviously pins, normally people would think of this sort of thing. I wouldn't recommend using this kind of pin, because if you put that into your fabric, you'll see this area here, it has distorted the fabric, and it has done underneath as well. You can see it sort of divots inside. If you do that a lot, you end up making the top half of your fabric a slightly domed effect and the underside slightly not domed, and actually that can make you have more pleats than if you didn't baste at all. So the best thing to do is to use special basting pins. As anyone who's done any kind of quilting will probably be aware of these, but if you're not and you haven't done this sort of thing before, they are essentially safety pins. But if you have a look, they have a bend to them, area here, and the point of that is that the actual pin bends and not your fabric. So you put that in, put it through, clip it together, and if I just hold that straight there, you'll see there's virtually no distortion of that fabric at all, and very little on the back as well. And it's a much better way of holding those fabrics together, and it obviously you can easily remove them as you go towards. Obviously the original type of basting with the needle and thread, you can sew over that. You will not be sewing over these, otherwise you obviously will break your machine, certainly your needle. So that's another type of basting. Other methods, there are obviously types of quilting where your foot can help you prevent from actually distorting fabrics as you go. One of the methods is to use a walking foot. This is okay if you want to do straight lines. Really it's not ideal for doing very sort of fancy quilting, because you would have to keep moving your work all the time, whereas with free motion embroidery your feed dogs will be lowered, and obviously you're going to have the movement, but you move your actual piece around, you don't turn it as you go. And this kind of foot is great for doing, as I say, straight lines, and you've got this kind of guide here which is adjustable, and you would move that in and out to wherever you want to set the width of your lines. You'd maybe mark your first one, and then you would run your second one from that, and as you go you follow your previous line, and the effect you get is essentially is this kind of effect where you get this kind of checkerboard pattern. You can do any kind of pattern with it. You can have very, very narrow lines and then wide ones the other way, or you can have just them going one way, whatever you want, but the idea is that you get a very even effect because you're using the guide to help you go from one line to the next. And I would also recommend every so often doing more chalk lines. You can remove your chalk later on, but it just helps to maintain a straight line if you're wanting to do straight lines, because it is occasionally possible to sort of move slightly as you're going through, and then of course you're going to echo that on the next one and then the next one, and it ends up getting much worse. So every so often it's worth doing a straight line just to kind of maintain the straightness of your lines throughout. So that's one method of using it if you don't have free motion embroidery foot. If you do, and you want to do the random type of quilting, then that's obviously where you would do something like this. One of the other types would be using something like this, similar to how they hold tags on clothing in the shops. It puts a tiny little plastic tag through your piece. It's got a very, very sharp point on the end here, and the idea is you just literally pop it through your fabrics. You can see it comes out the other side, and you just press the button, and what that does is it creates a tiny little tag here. And you see it goes to the other side of the fabric, and it just holds those layers together, and you do them every so often. And it's a really easy way of holding fabrics together. There's no distortion, and they obviously can't come undone as you're working. They don't move around very much. That's a really great way. It's actually quite fun to do as well, and it's a really great way of holding your fabrics together. And when you're sewing, you can sew over them because they're only plastic. They won't hurt the needle at all. But if you do want to remove them as you go, just a pair of scissors just on the top. They will just snip through. Helps if you can actually get underneath them. If you're doing this on the sewing machine, the flat bed of the sewing machine, there we are, helps to pop it up. There we go, so you just pop that off like that. So that really, really, really simple to work with. And you buy them, these here, in packs of sort of thousands. They're very, very cheap to come by. And it's a really, really great tool for holding your fabrics together. You can use that in all sorts of different ways, not just in quilting. You can use it to hold the hem of a skirt up if it comes down. You can use it to hold you know, a sort of seam together just for a temporary fix, it's a really good tool, this, so it's worth getting. It's not expensive either. I think this was probably about £6 or £7. I don't know what that would be in dollars, but it's a really handy tool to have, so it's worth getting. And the other method of basting is with a spray. I use this type, which is for fabric, and really you just obviously shake it, and the idea is you just put this between your layers. So I'm just going to pop a little bit on to show you, just literally spray it onto the wadding, not on the fabric, tiny bit on there, and pop that down, and then another layer on the top of that, and then pop that down, and that holds those layers together. It is permanent, you can leave that in there. It will wash out a bit when you wash it, or you can set it with an iron and it will hold it in there. Obviously you don't tend to iron quilting pieces before you quilt them too much, but it can be used for various different things, and it just holds the layers together, as you can see, and it's fine to sew through. Your needle won't get gunked up when you're sewing through that, it's absolutely fine. So that's a really quick and easy way to baste your pieces together. So I just wanted to do that quick little video to show you the different types of basting for anyone who hasn't done quilting and is not familiar with, or there might be some of these methods you've not come across before. And you know, go with whatever works for you. The easiest way that most people have access to, of course, is needle and thread, and you just use these sort of cheap, you know, polyester reels of thread in one of the colours you're never going to use, one of your bright colours that you thought, oh, I'm never going to use that, when you got it in a set, something like that, because you just remove it at the end and you want to be able to see it easily, and as I said, you just pull it out like that and it's gone. So that's it really. I didn't really have time to put this into my other video, but I just wanted to have a quick talk about the different types, and I hope that's been of some use to you. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.